we have maybe an administration that is going to be even more reckless, even more likely to become involved in a war against Iran. But the fact is that the U.S. just does not have the means to really prosecute a war against Iran. This is something we've talked about. It's the same thing, in Ukraine. Like apparently one of Trump's plans was to make the offer to Putin, and if he doesn't refuse, or if he refuses, to flood Ukraine with weapons. Well, we don't have any weapons to give them, so it doesn't work. It's the same thing. Okay, yeah, we can go to war against Iran, but Iran will probably sink our ships and destroy our bases. I think, again, the Pentagon is probably going to try to tell them, hey, don't do this. This is going to be bad. Yeah, we can damage Iran, but they can really damage us. So let's just not do this. So that may, maybe he'll hear the voice of reason. And if they do it, it'll actually be a victory for Iran.
Yeah, right. It'll be a humiliating defeat for the United States.
Right.
I think this would be I'm confident that in a conflict between Iran and the United States, Iran wins, because we don't have the capability to really wage a war over there,
Right.
especially not a war of attrition. Iran's not a small place, and they
Right.
clearly are quite sophisticated and
Right.
have advanced capabilities. It's one thing losing for the United States American psyche, though. It's one thing to lose a war against Russia,
Yeah.
even if it's a proxy war, or against China. But the idea of losing to Iran, I think for most Americans, they still have this
Right. They think
kind
it's
of racist
basic
idea of
Yeah, no, I think you're right. They kind of imagine that it's just a slightly larger version of Afghanistan or something. And
Right.
so the two countries couldn't be more different. Afghanistan is a very, very backwards country. And, I'm not talking about morally or anything, but just technologically, it's very, very backwards. But Iran is not. Iran is a very sophisticated country with some very impressive military technology.
Okay, so World War III more likely now than it was 2 weeks ago? Or
I don't
same
think
old,
it.
same
Yeah,
old?
I think it's just as likely. Again, maybe a regional war in the Middle East is slightly more likely, but I don't think there's. It's not impossible, but I think a regional war could remain a regional war. There's no reason why it has to become World War III. The Ukraine war has a greater potential for escalating into World War III, even though I think the overall situation in the Middle East is actually much more dangerous than it is in Ukraine. If things go completely south in Ukraine, and they could, then we actually could have World War III on our hands.
Okay, well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Damn it, Dad. I feel like you're right, and I hate that you're right, being so cynical.
Yeah, the cynics are almost
just
always right. That's what I've learned. I've got to learn it the hard way. It's easy to engage in wishful thinking. I guess I did
fun.
like the first time around in 2016. There were a lot of great things that Trump said. He was going to abolish NATO and whatever. And then at the end of his term, I was completely soured on him. And I never saw anything afterwards to convince me that he had become a different person. Yeah, he continues to occasionally say great things and make great tweets, and we all love it. But just don't forget that, like 5 minutes later, he says the opposite thing. That's just Trump.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, storm clouds still up ahead. Okay. Well, we'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, the next couple of years. So we'll keep on going. I'm learning so much about this, just how the world works, and it's fascinating. And I hope people listening feel the same way. Just keep on realizing just how this machine, this political machine, just how it keeps moving forward, it keeps going, and I don't know. It's got to end. It's going to end.
Yeah, no, eventually we'll hit the iceberg. I think that's right.
Right, and there's a lot of icebergs already there on the
horizon.
I
mean, in a way, we're already hitting them. It's not like
right.
This is something way off in the future. We've seen it happen already. The U.S. has really taken has suffered some very severe damage to its reputation, and Europe has suffered really severe damage to its economy, to its military capabilities.
Right. I'm an American. I love this country, but I feel like America needs to suffer a humiliating defeat to rein it in. And that's not because I want us to lose or I want Americans to die. It's the opposite. I want us to end the empire, come back home, take care of our country, our people, learn how to be friends and get along with everybody. This hegemonic thinking is so poisonous and so destructive.
Right.
And there's no, the theory is just wrong.
Yeah.
This theory, like Mearsheimer's theory of offensive realism doesn't make sense. Look at Russia, look at China, look at India. These are all three superpowers. They're all right next to each other, and they know how to get along, and they know how to.
I think you're probably mischaracterizing Mearsheimer's theory. It's not that there are always going to be wars between, different powers. I think that's a big mistake. That's not his argument. No, Mearsheimer is a realist, and the realists, if you're a realist, you can avoid war. I think that's what he would argue, and he's been right. As a realist, for example, he understands that Russia has these security interests. And so even before the war broke out, he was saying the U.S. needs to negotiate to avoid war. I think he would say the same thing about China and India and whatever, because the realists are, understand that actually diplomacy is the cost-effective way of pursuing your own interests. War is something only of last resort and is ultimately destructive to everybody involved. And, that's a realistic appraisal. It's the ideologues that get us into war and who just don't, they don't have a grasp on reality. They don't really weigh the risks, the costs and the benefits well, but the realists do. And they can keep us out of war.
I guess what I'm rejecting from Mearsheimer is just this idea of containment. That's just not necessary.
I think, we talked about that. I think he was mistaken about that as far as China goes. Again, he's not for war with China. And he believes that China can be contained, while avoiding war. I just don't see, I think that he may be wrong. You can't try to contain China and avoid war at the same time. And there's no reason to contain China. China is a great power, and it will exert influence in that part of the world. And there's just no reason why we should try to stop it. But we talked about that at length earlier.
Right.
But that's the only one issue, where I disagree on Mearsheimer. I think he's very solidly grounded, and he's somebody that, everybody should listen to. He has a lot of wise things to say about, conflicts throughout the world.
Okay. I know. I'm a fan too. Sorry, Mearsheimer. I didn't mean to call you out. No. But I just don't like the way this is going. I just feel like the U.S., our involvement in the Middle East, we have too many bases there. They're sitting ducks. This escalation with Iran, and Israel is going to drag us in.
Yeah, no, it's a bad situation.
Our bases get
very dangerous.
Right. When our bases get hit. Like, are we going to try to enact a draft and send people over? I mean, I don't understand the plan. Or will we just try to start up our war engine and the engine just sputters and dies, and that's our humiliating defeat? That's what I'm hoping for. That we just try and like, ooh, sorry, we can't do this. Nobody really wants to suit up and go.
Yeah, for example, I don't see any chance that we're going to send troops like to Iran. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell of that happening. The thing I'm worried about is that if Israel really starts to lose, let's say if there's a revolution in Egypt is an enormous country, and they actually join the axis of resistance and attack Israel, to bring an end to the genocide. And then Israel is actually the Israeli army is being pushed back to the sea. That's the point where, first of all, Israel is likely to use a nuclear weapon. And then second, we actually might see U.S. troops sent there because of that, this fanatical support for Israel. That's the one exception to the boots on the ground prohibition.
Right. I mean, boots are already on the ground right now for that system.
Within Israel, that's true. But I mean, actual combat troops that could... I could see that happening sometime down the road if it comes to that, if Israel's very existence is threatened.
Yeah, I just feel like we all know where this is headed, and we're just kind of waiting just for how to play out. But the end result is going to be the same. It's going to be, there's going to be a large war. U.S. involvement is going to increase. Israel will eventually defeat it. The U.S. will suffer humiliating defeat as well. We'll have to withdraw the bases. The only thing that's kind of is uncertain is, will a nuclear weapon be used?
Yeah.
How many millions of people are going to die for this?
Right.
It's just,
I think the best outcome that I can imagine is that Israel is defeated, but does not use a nuclear weapon. And let's say most of the Jewish population of Israel just leaves. They go to the U.S., they go to Europe, and except for maybe 1 million or so, I don't know, who genuinely are attached to their land and have no animosity towards the Palestinians, and they'll be part of a new Palestinian state. I mean, that would be the ideal ending.
But I wouldn't put that. No animosity. I don't.
I'm just saying there's the 1 million or so that stay. They'll make it clear we're staying because we were never part of this. And I think that's true. There's probably about 1 million Israelis, or maybe 500,000, I don't know, that generally never had any hatred, did not support the genocide, and love their land and want to stay there. And I think they would be treated with respect. They would be understood that these are not the ones that were killing us. And could be part of a new Palestinian
I think 1 million
future.
is generous.
Yeah, maybe. I think it probably is.